In today's episode of the Pathway Presents podcast, I got a very interesting guest here with me today. I'm with Richard Carreon, and he's sailing over from the folks at Videon, and they're doing something very interesting. It's a very interesting, video compute platform, and we really want to deep dive into what it actually means, how they're optimizing, cloud workflows at the source, and we want to really see, what are the use cases, but also how, and as we know it on the Pathway Presents podcast, how Richard is thinking about growth for the company. So, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Lucas.
Of course, yeah. So maybe give people a quick overview. You guys are definitely, creating something very new, and a lot of people probably haven't heard about how it even works. Maybe give people a quick insight into what Videon is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So Videon at its core is a video technology company. And essentially we're creating a whole new category of product. And really what we're focusing on is enabling folks to optimize their cloud workflows at the source. So really where video is being created. And we're enabling them to make their live video, whether the live video or the infrastructure or the workflows, more intelligent, more flexible, and more efficient, no matter the verticals that it's being applied to or the application itself. And the way we're actually doing it is with a hybrid to cloud live video architecture. So that's taking the best of the cloud and bringing it actually down to the source where it's augmenting the cloud. And what that's enabling them to do is taking advantage of what's called edge computing at the source. And so we call this a video compute platform. And the computing itself uses a combination of edge processing as well as a growing marketplace of edge apps as well. And we have some great leaders that have built on our platform specifics include Net Insight as well as Zixi and TouchStream most recently.
Gotcha. Now, for people who are, wrapping their head around of what you were just describing, what would be sort of a practical use case where the technology is being involved?
Yeah, it's quite interesting you say practical use case because there's so many use cases out there. And just like the cloud, it could be applied to almost anything.
Mhm.
But I'll give you an interesting example. Is let's talk about in the stadium. Let's say you're going to your favorite football game, whether if you're American, it's the NFL or American football, or if you are in Europe, soccer, regardless of the sport itself. And when you're at the event itself, you'd like to have a second screen experience. And so what we enable for their solution in the venue is a second screen experience for people in the venue. The challenge is that you have latency challenges, also to process video and what's called metadata can be very costly when it comes to what's called second tier and third tier feeds. And so what that's enabling venues to do is now monetize other cameras that weren't monetized through what's called their linear channels or their tier one channels, which is something you might see on your Apple TV or your Roku or through your broadcast subscription service. And so we are now making it more cost effective and essentially democratizing broadcast like features for smaller tier content that's supporting of the tier one content. And I can go really, really technical, but I want to keep it as high level as possible.
Yeah,
So essentially
makes
at the end of the
sense.
day, it's an enabling technology, very similar to how your Intel chip in your Mac or PC is enabling it to do all types of core processing.
Very good. Now, who would you say would be an ideal client? Like, what's the type of people that, visit the website? What types of companies are they coming from? Like, who is, maybe tell us a couple of characteristics about a great fitting client for video.
Absolutely. So there's actually, as I mentioned, it could be quite broad, but because we're a small company, we want to be hyper focused and hyper targeted. So the way we think about it is it's the three facets. First is business type. The second is around verticals. And lastly is around personas. So in
Mhm.
terms of the business types, we work with system integrators, which essentially piece together and architect really great solutions for clients, cloud providers, which we all know who the great cloud providers are, online video platforms, also known as OVPs, as well as SaaS providers themselves, and anyone in the broadcast world. So that's from the business types. From the vertical specific focuses, we've actually found and proven our depth in live sports and live events. But we're also showing a lot of breadth across all types of other verticals, including safety, auctions, betting, and there's just so much more beyond that. And on the persona level, which is really interesting, is the personas actually are consistent across all the verticals I mentioned and all the business types as well. So that includes CTOs, consultants, product managers, solution architects, as well as solution engineers, video developers, as well as video producers.
I mean, we spoke about a lot about what you guys are doing. Maybe give me a bit of an insight into sort of how you guys are, thinking about growth in terms of, from a strategic angle.
Yeah, so live video is quite interesting because our customer and partner ecosystem is quite complex. So, for example, our customers can also be a referral partner, they can also be a technology partner, they can also be an edge app partner, and vice versa in no specific order. And so ultimately, we want everyone to be a customer. I mean, wouldn't that be a perfect world? But they can start their journey almost at any point. And at any point that they start, they can be a single label, whether it's a partner, regardless of what type of partnership. It could be all of the above. It could be three of the four, two of the four. There's no single way that a potential customer or a known customer hits all those labels all at once. And so it's kind of this not omnipresent, but it's really a fluid way of being able to become a customer at their needs, based on their needs. And so some of the challenges that we had is that's one, it's a very complex business. Two is we're a very small team with a tight budget with big ROI needs. Also, the industry is very tight and it's highly technical. So we took all these challenges, including how small our sales team was, and like, how do we scale? And so, as I said earlier, our technology can be applied to many different types of verticals. It's got a very wide range of applications. And so we're like, let's just pick three. And so where we focused on were the magic three. Live sports, where we're really focused on vertical growth, which was really focused on near-term growth. Second was around platforms. So I mentioned online video platforms, that would fall under there. And that's really around scale. And lastly is around media and entertainment, also known as M&E. And that's really where the enterprise focus is. And so with that wrapped up, we looked at the funnel, said, what are the challenges? And the challenges is really not the top of funnel, but really that middle funnel. So we took our resources and say, how are we going to divvy this up over 100%? So we decided that we're going to dedicate 80% collectively to product marketing and partner marketing, while allocating the leftover 20%, 10% to corporate marketing, so we can continue to make noise in the marketplace, positioning, all that fun stuff. 5% to performance marketing today, right? Eventually we'll up performance.
Cool. Yeah.
And lastly is 5% on developer marketing. But we did a 50-50 split on product marketing and partner marketing. Well, why? So if you're not familiar with product marketing, because Lucas, you know that it's like somebody says marketing, it's like every day, like, what is that? Right? They need some design, throw it at marketing. But they're like, I'm the email guy. I'm not the design person. Right. And so if you're new to marketing or learning more about the disciplines within marketing, product marketing is really focused on promoting the products and solutions, really acting as the voice of the market in product and acting as the voice of product in the market. And partner marketing is promoting end-to-end partner-powered solutions. And there could be a various amount of goals between you and the said partner. In our case, we were leveraging product marketing to create vertical specific use cases, which would help move the needle. Because I said, it's like a Swiss Army knife in terms of our product. You can do whatever you want with it. It's a matter of being told what you can actually do with it, just like an iPhone. And so we tasked product marketing with coming up with creative use cases, solutions, and training content that would then be used in our partner marketing activities, where we use partner marketing as the distribution vessel and essentially be able to source net new deals through our partners. And the beauty of that, which is really interesting, is that when it comes to partners versus a paid ad, nothing wrong with paid ads, by the way. We're just thinking about how to be more effective. In our case, is that your partners, they're actually bringing the qualified folks to the table. You're not having to sift through junk leads all the time. People that are raising their hand to come to the webinar because they're a customer of theirs, you already have trust. So you're actually removing a piece of the funnel, that trust factor. We're now able to extend our sales force and our reach to relevant audiences. It's cost effective. We're not having to pay based on impressions or conversions, where you're always concerned about ROAS and at the mercy of the black boxes, i.e. the social channels of the world, Instagram, Facebook, what have you. And of course, as I mentioned, you're actually reaching the right audience because the content is what's driving that.
When you
And
say,
so,
quick question on that. When you say partner marketing, I think a lot of marketers might be listening and wonder, like, what is Richard actually doing? Like, what is it, that you guys, set up partnered webinars? You alluded to that a little bit. Like, maybe can you give people a little bit of an insight? What would be sort of certain strategies and tactics on that?
So you mentioned a tactic we use, which is a webinar. But so you really want to stress this a lot because I meet a lot of marketers that are, and even people outside of marketing that are like, oh yeah, we need to do a webinar and a blog and this, and you're like, well, hold on, let's start with the narrative. So what value, if we were to work with each other, what value can we bring to customers? And are there solutions that we can sell that is in demand in the marketplace? Are we actually solving a pain point? So there needs to be a biz dev approach at first, court each other just like you would in sales, get to know each other. What are your goals? This is our goals. This is where we're going. This is where our products are going. Who are your ideal customers? Who are our ideal customers? If it's a fit, right, the biz dev team kind of massage that relationship. Then we're like, okay, how can our technologies work together? Then the technology teams come together and then they riff and they're like, I think we have a solution. At that point, then marketing enters the conversation with their marketing team and says, hey, our goals are X, Y, and Z. And our goals, I'll be very transparent, are driving net new leads that are qualified, as well as creating content, because at the same time, our content team is very tiny. So being able to create content while doing something else at the same time, killing two birds with one stone, or as I say, hug two puppies with one hug. If you're able to do that in one effort, that is amazing, really growth hacking at that point. And then ultimately being associated with the right brands that align with our corporate marketing story. And our corporate marketing story is around the edge compute story. And so we then work together to define a singular narrative that we both agree on that works both in favor of ourselves. And then we bring out the tactics and the timing. And that's where then you have things like a webinar, a blog post that might go with that, a case study. Maybe there's a shared customer as well, which is actually very, very powerful because that is, if you're not familiar, case studies are your biggest ticket into earned media in trade publications. It should never be about you. It should be about the customer. Little tidbit there on the PR side. Email marketing to your database. And if you don't know, email is your most cost-effective channel to drive repeat purchases or to keep engaged. And as I mentioned, webinars, in-person events, whether that's an event collab with or without content. I always like to have content in all my in-person events. It's not just a party. It's got to have some content and some value there. And so we mix and match what we'd like to do based on the partnership. And we build a campaign around it. And that campaign might happen over a course of a week because maybe there's a big trade show that's happening, or over the course of several months. So that just depends on the partner. So I'll give you one tangible example. We have a partner called TouchStream. I don't need to get into everything that they do. They really add value to our product as much as we add value to their customer base as well. They built an Edge app. We came together. We defined this beautiful story. And what we did is we created a webinar and a blog post to go with it. And the agreed upon terms was that their objective was to go out and market this webinar and drive net new leads as well as we were. So there was actually a symbiotic relationship. They got new leads, we got new leads. And then at the end of the show, the webinar was recorded. So now we have created content. We have now clips for social. Now you're creating content. Now you see how we're going with one single piece of narrative. Pushed it through email, etc. And then I have the sales teams come together, our sales team and their sales team, and said, hey, come together, pick your top accounts, top leads. And then I really encourage you all to then co-work with each other on how we co-sell a single solution to any given account. And so now you're kind of getting a little bit into account-based marketing, a little bit. I wouldn't say full. You dabble in account-based marketing, but then you're actually creating really tight relationships between your sales teams, both theirs and yours. And it's actually really powerful because in our world, and you might see this in the future, especially as you get into more complex enterprise level selling and marketing, is your customers don't want to buy a single tool. Like I don't want just a fidget spinner. I want the whole contraption. I need an end-to-end solution. And so that's where partnerships become a really important piece to your marketing and sales piece.
What role do you think the website plays? Partners take on a big role. How do you think about the website? You probably is a little bit of a different role than you're used to from your sort of SaaS, positions prior.
Absolutely. And also keep in mind, folks, because we're creating a whole new category, where we sit and how people buy from us is not the same as maybe somebody who's established in the CRM space or the influencer affiliate marketing space, because generally your buyers already know that they need a solution that exists already today, right? And they're looking at different options while we're creating a whole new way of thinking about live video. So to your point, Lucas, the website actually lives in a different part of the funnel. It actually lives on the secondary point. So we're drawing people in through these channels, whether that's partners, social, through trade organizations, what have you, and then leveraging the site as a 24/7 salesperson to allow them to educate themselves about the technology itself at a deeper level. And so that's kind of where our site sits today. Over time, as we start to own the entire category, then the site will then be your traditional source point where people will land, learn through your content, blogs, etc., through keywords, SEO, SEM, whatever you want to do in terms of channel distribution, and that will shift its purpose within the funnel.
Gotcha. And how do you see the role of the website then evolving, right? As you know, you're building out the marketing growth and function.
Yeah. So the way I would actually see it evolving, it's quite interesting, right? It's going to be a consistent balance. So first, we have to start looking for success. And how do we define success? Specifically from the enterprise perspective of how it's being utilized today. And it's really qualitative feedback today, asking our customers, hey, how did you learn about it? I want to learn more about your buying experience and seeing if there are any patterns there. The second component, of course, is using pixels and tools like HubSpot or Pardot or Marketo or what have you to look at actual activity of your customers on site. Are they looking at the pricing? When we launch a new product, how are they rediscovering our products? How are they looking at new use cases? And is the site playing a key integral role within the path of purchase? And then as we transition from the website being a sales enablement tool after they've entered the funnel to it being a tool where they first land to discover content, et cetera, then you can start looking at things like conversion KPIs, how many people raise their hand, which is more of a decisive, I'm ready to contact sales versus something a little bit more passive, like downloading a white paper or reading a blog post or anything that's gated, to be quite frank. And that is even a big debate right now in B2B is, do you gate your content, which I don't want to dive into depending on who you talk to. But with that said, you want to add value. And there's different ways of looking at those KPIs. So again, it's not a perfect answer. You really need to start at what are your goals and what are you trying to achieve with different segments, and then reverse engineer that, because the path to purchase is going to be different from person A versus person B. And in our world, we don't say person, we actually say buying group A versus buying group B. Because in any given deal, we can have anywhere between 4 upwards of 15 to 20 people in a single deal, depending on who you're talking to.
Gotcha. That doesn't make things easier.
It doesn't. It's quite complex, actually.
Very good. So as we sort of, been deep diving into, what you guys are doing and how you're thinking about growth, I would love to learn a little bit more about yourself, right, as a marketer. And I think it's quite interesting, that you came from the SaaS and software background and being in that very complex environment right now. Like, how do you personally keep on educating yourself? Like with all the noise out there, as a marketer that you could read and listen to, like, where do you find high quality information for your personal education?
Absolutely. So one, stay inquisitive. What worked yesterday may not work today, and what didn't work yesterday may actually work today. Also, keep in mind, technologies that were once really, really cool at one point don't always work. As I mentioned, what worked yesterday may not work today. But also going a little bit old school, what we found is that text-only emails actually outperform HTML-based emails, which I think is quite common. And then, if you look online for blog posts and content, it's like, oh, always send your emails between Tuesdays and Thursdays, between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. or what have you. And sometimes we like to test things on the weekend and see what the open rate is. So constantly test. Don't be scared to fail. If your audience is large enough to test, by all means, please test as much as you can. If your audience is very small and niche, reach out to a couple folks directly and just ask them questions. Hey, what kind of content do you like to consume? How do you like to consume content? To your point, Lucas, who do you like to consume content from? From my perspective, I get a lot of my content from LinkedIn through feeds of folks that I think are really great marketers. I also like to follow folks through LinkedIn as well. I don't really use other social channels, but I like to follow other folks on LinkedIn as might have a controversial point of view as well. But also ask your community. Just like producing a product, you always want to ask your customer, hey, what do you like about the product? What do you not like about the product? And I will actually have lunch with a customer and say, hey, what kind of content are you most interested in? What are places you like to investigate in terms of finding new products and services? Why us? Things like that. And that helps us create different kind of content pieces.
Very good. I got some rapid fire questions to wrap it up for today. Are you ready for those?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
What is the last book you read or the last podcast you listened to?
Yeah. So the last book I read, I just finished it last week. It's by Cal Penn and it's called Are You Serious? And I'm not sure if you know who Cal Penn is. He's a wonderful actor as well as he worked for the Obama administration and even started his own show focused on the diversity of the United States. And what's really interesting is you follow his journey from being a star in this movie called Harold and Kumar to working for the White House administration to starting his own show and really being able to see what goes on behind closed doors in terms of how Hollywood works, the challenges of being an immigrant to the United States. And it really resonated with me because I am American born. I am an American, but also I've seen and observed a lot of the challenges of not being a native born U.S. citizen. So I thought that was really cool. I just finished it the other day. I was on the subway. I was on my little iPad. And I was like, I think I'm done with the book. I was like, wow, I feel so accomplished. So if you don't ever finish
Nice.
your books, trust me, you're not alone. So that was a big accomplishment for me recently.
Very cool. And for the very last question, I would like to ask you if today would be your very first day joining Videon, what's the one advice that you would give yourself for your journey?
Yes, that's an excellent question. Don't beat yourself up if you don't understand the industry entirely, especially as you come into a whole new vertical or industry. In my case, I didn't know much about live video, specifically on the technical side. So I
Mhm.
found it very hard, very frustrating, kind of like learning a whole new language. Right now, I'm taking Spanish actually. And I was very frustrated at times because I felt like I wasn't able to actually help. But what I recommend is lean on the folks that understand the technology, lean on your product managers. In my case, I leaned a lot on our founder and CTO who built the company from the ground up, as well as leaning in on our killer solution engineers and solution architects that really were able to convert technical language into plain old English for me. And just be inquisitive, as I said, be inquisitive, keep asking questions. There is no dumb question. Read the trade publications, and that alone, as long as you see progress and growth and you're in a meeting, you're like, oh, I know what that acronym is. In my case, it's like, what is an RTMP feed? Or what is SRT? What's the difference between the two? And if you are able to just grow in that capacity week over week, incremental growth, you are winning. And don't be afraid to say, I don't know.
It's
That's what I would
very,
tell myself.
very encouraging. I mean, we had a lot of, marketers on the show that were actually talking about how to best, get your feet into a new industry. So I think this is some very sound advice, specifically if you're getting into more complex, products and industries. Really appreciate that. So for the very last question, right? If people would be forgetting all that we discussed about Videon today, Richard, what's the one thing that people should remember?
Videon killed the encoder. That's what everyone should remember. This is the start of the demise of the encoder. So it's a whole new world. As once when the iPhone killed the regular flip phone or the dumb phone, whatever you want to call it, it's a similar story, but just for a whole nother industry.
Thanks a lot for being a guest on Partner Presents.
Absolutely.